So have you heard about the rise of the nuns in America? And I'm not talking about nuns like this. It's when they say the rise of the nuns, they mean this, nuns. They do not have any religious affiliation at all. 1/5 of all Americans now consider themselves to be nuns. 1/5. It is the fastest growing religious group in the country. People that do not affiliate with any religion. And they used to be church attenders. 78% of them used to go to a church. And when you talk to this group of people who no longer go to church, and you ask them, why don't you go to church? Because these people are surveyed all the time. That's how I heard about them. I started reading about the surveys. In their conversations, and they're saying why they don't attend church, is it any surprise that one of the top reasons they list is too many Christians doing too many un-Christian things in these churches? They're like, I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I mean, it's a huge, huge issue in America, is that people are looking at the behavior of the people in the church saying, yeah, I don't think so. I still believe in God, but I just don't want to be a part of a church anymore because I don't enjoy being around these people. They're not nice human beings. And this is a huge issue in America today. One atheist wrote on his blog, he said, Christians, they love to talk about how dutiful and loving and compassionate they are, yet I have yet to meet one who does not practice hypocrisy to the highest degree. So they're like, I'm done with it. Now, I didn't know the word hypocrisy when I was young. Did not know it. But I can remember being disgusted by it, even when I didn't understand what the word meant. When we were young, we rarely went to church growing up. We went on Christmas and Easter only, usually. And I was fine with that. Didn't have anything more. Now, the only exception to that was when I would go to stay with my grandma and grandpa's for the summer. Because they went every week to their church. And it was a Christian church. I was unfamiliar with it. We didn't attend that type of church when we would go on Christmas and Easter. And it was one of those sit down, stand up, kneels. And they would just spontaneously say things. And I didn't know what they were saying. And there was no way to follow what they were saying. And I'm like, what is going on? I don't understand any of this. And I was so confused, but the part of it that was most confusing to me was the behavior of my relatives that attended that church. Because for 1 hour a week, they weren't drunk, and they weren't swearing, and they were polite, and nice, and civil. And so I was confused by the service, but I was more confused by the behavior of my relatives that attended that thing. And I can remember thinking, oh, this is a game. That's all this is. You go on an hour a week and you're nice. You're a nice human being. And then the rest of the week we have to tolerate you until Sunday morning. I can remember as a young boy thinking, wouldn't it be great if they were this way 7 days a week? But they weren't. They were that way 60 minutes a week. And I can remember at a young age being disgusted by it and thinking, oh, it's just a game. That's all this church stuff is, because I wasn't a church attender, even though I thought it was because I went twice a year. That's enough, right? Plenty. And it really was plenty to me at that time in my life. I didn't want any more than that. So I didn't know that I was experiencing hypocrisy, but that's what I was being disgusted and turned off by. So we need to define the word. Hypocrisy is not the gap between what we are and what we want to be. Do you understand the significance of that? That's not hypocrisy. Because there is no human being that says, I am perfect in every area of my life. Right? You all get that. There is no human being that doesn't have a gap between what they do and say and think and kind of what they would like to do and say and think. And if you think you have no gap, this church is not the church for you. You need to attend a church with other perfect people. Because all of us have a gap. Every one of us. And the truth is we've got more than one gap. So that's not hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is not having the gap. Hypocrisy is what you do with the gap that currently exists in your life. Hypocrisy is claiming that the gap doesn't exist. To be something that you're not. That's where hypocrisy kicks in, is when you claim to be something you're not. It's that gap between our public and private character where we pretend to be this and we're not really that at all. It's like my relative. It's like, you know, I'm a nice, kind, civil, sober, politely spoken man. Except when I'm not. And that gap, and when we hide that gap, you know, the literal word hypocrite is an acting term. And it was where they would put on a mask, and the mask would be their new character. That's the idea of hypocrisy. It's when you wear masks. And it is so easy in American Christianity for everybody just to wear masks. It's so easy. So I've been doing this series for a while, and the idea is that we're tackling some tough questions of people who don't believe, or maybe they don't go to a church, or they do believe in God. They ask, and when I was planning this series, I didn't know if I was going to cover this subject today, except 2 weeks ago. 2 times in that week, I heard people who don't go to church say, in essence, they said, I would consider Jesus if his followers were nicer people. And when I heard it the second time, I'm like, got it. All right, we'll talk about this. Because it's affecting the rise of the nuns. 78, 1/5 of all Americans. 1/5 fastest growing religious group. I believe in God. I just don't think that church and Christians are for me. So we have to address this very serious subject. So that's why I said we're in this series called I'm Asking for a Friend. We all have friends or relatives that are in that group, all of us. They do not go to church. Maybe they still believe in God. They just don't go, and they don't think church or Christians is for them. And so they want to know, why are there so many hypocrites in the church? That's what they want to know. It's why does our behavior not line up with what we say? And for us, more importantly, what do we do about it? And that's where we're going to put our emphasis today, is what do we do about this? So I want to ask you to open up your program. Inside, you'll find these notes. Would you grab them? Take them out today. Grab a pen. There will be some really important things you want to write down today. And welcome to those, of course, who've tuned in today on YouTube and you're watching. So glad you found us on YouTube, or for those of you who found us at our website at penuelchurch.life. So glad you're there. You have notes. You can pop those open. If you're watching on YouTube, the notes are in the description section. You can pop them open and follow along with us. There will be some things you want to write down. But we're going to jump right into this. So what do we do about this hypocrisy that exists in the church? The first thing is this, and I need to acknowledge the truth about me. I need to be really open with you today about the truth about me. You need to be open about the truth about you. That's how you destroy hypocrisy. It's with truthfulness and honesty. You ever heard of the Rainbow Man? Some of you are my age and up, you remember this guy. He was everywhere in the 70s and 80s. If you turned on a football game, you saw him in the end zone. He was at Super Bowls. He was at the Olympics. He was at Princess Di's wedding, holding up a John 3:16 sign. Or like this one, wearing it on his shirt. You can't see it. Jesus saves and John 3:16. He was everywhere. I mean, you just saw this. I can remember many times watching football games, and they'd be kicking the extra point to go through the end zone. There'd be the guy through the goal post, and he'd be holding up his John 3:16 sign. He was everywhere. Today, he's only one place. He's in prison for the rest of his life. That's the only place you can go see this guy now. Because in 1992, he threatened to kill the president. Then he took a woman hostage in his hotel bathroom, threatened to kill her, and threatened to shoot down the planes that were landing at a nearby airport. And the FBI had to break into his hotel room, save the woman. He was sentenced to consecutive life sentences and will serve the rest of his existence in prison. The man who held up a sign all about the love of God. See the discrepancy? See the break here? God's love, God's love. I'm killing this woman. I'm shooting these planes down, and I'm killing the president. But God is love. And it's that inconsistent message between what we say and what we do that creates the feeling of tremendous hypocrisy. It's like, oh, there's nothing to this. The answer to this is this. It's honesty. Hypocrisy ends with honesty. It ends with honesty. So before we get into the honesty part of this, I need to show you just this one thing. First, I want you to write this down. I want you to understand just how serious hypocrisy is to God. This is really a big deal, and I think Christians tend to downplay it. Matter of fact, in my experience, in almost 29 years of being a pastor, I've seen Christians downplay this over and over again. We just need to consider, what if we're wrong about that? When Jesus was here on earth, he dealt with hypocrites all the time. They were the religious people of his day in Israel, the religious leaders. They would have been like the pastors and the elders and the deacons of their churches. These were the people that he had the most issue with because they were such hypocrites. Matter of fact, some of his harshest language was aimed at those people. Some of his harshest language. Look what he said to him in one case. He said, you're like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean, which again, to a Jew living in Israel, you couldn't touch those things. And he's like, yeah, that's all you are. You're just these fake people. On the outside, you look really good, but on the inside, there is so much awful stuff inside of you. And then he said, in the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. And he said to him on repeated occasions, woe to you. And the woe was, your future is disaster. Woe to you. Woe to you. Because you're nothing but a hypocrite. Woe to you. And some of his harshest words in the life of Jesus were reserved for hypocrites. So if Jesus treated it that seriously, we need to consider it. And I want you to answer in your own mind, don't respond anyway. Am I a hypocrite? Because now we're into the confession part of this, the honest truth about me. So here, let me be honest with you. First, I am capable of hypocrisy. Now some of you don't want to write that down because you don't think you are. That's fine. Just hold that thought as we go through this today. Maybe you'll rethink it, but I'm not rethinking it. I am telling you honestly, I'm capable of hypocrisy. And in the New Testament, again, we learn what drives this hypocrisy. Luke 10:9. Jesus saw this and he said, to some who are confident of their own righteousness and look down on everyone else, that's where hypocrisy grows. That's where hypocrisy grows, is when I really begin to puff myself up and tear you down. Let me put it this way. Here's where it goes. I begin to inflate my goodness and I deflate my badness. That's when hypocrisy grows. They're like, man, I'm really pretty good. And my bad, that's not really bad. So the more I inflate my own goodness and devalue or deflate my badness, and then it really becomes a problem when I spin it around for you. But your badness, well, that's bad. But your goodness, well, that's not as good as my goodness. So do you hear this? I mean, this happens all the time. That's what Jesus said. He said, to some who are confident of their own righteousness, my goodness, woohoo, my goodness, I'm good. And they look down on everyone else. And I really want you to think about it, put it in the back of your mind, do you ever look down, do you catch yourself looking down on other people because of the choices and the words and decisions they make? Because that's where hypocrisy really grows. It's like, they're really bad. I'm not bad. When we begin to devalue our own badness, that's when we're in trouble. One author put it this way, he said, hypocrisy is granting yourself the slack you don't give others. You ever done that? It's like when you blow it in that area, well, there's a good reason. I mean, you were tired. You were saving little Timmy from the well after he fell in. You were just exhausted from that. I mean, so you got a really good reason why you did that, but they are just bad. So let me give you an example of this. My son, I got two examples from this in I have a great relationship with my son Nathaniel, but in high school we really fought a lot. So he was a teenage boy who crossed lines and fought with me a lot. And so in high school, Nathaniel and I had a lot of conflict. So I love my son Nathaniel now. Nathaniel, if you're watching, I love you. He knows that I love him. We have a great relationship. But in high school, we struggled. One of the greatest areas of struggle was wet towels in his bedroom. Drove me crazy. He had a basement bedroom. And he'd walk in after taking a shower and throw his wet towel on the floor. And I was always concerned about mold in the basement. And so I can't tell you how many hundreds of wars we had over those wet towels. I got so mad that towards the end of his high school career, I would take that towel, I'd go back upstairs, I would fill it completely full of water and walk down and throw it on his bed. So that it's like reinforcing. It's like, yeah, you don't like it on the floor, on the bed? Well, I don't like it on the floor. Because you're going to leave and then I'm going to have to clean mold up. But it became a constant battle and war in our home. Nathaniel leaves, he goes off to college, does his own thing. One day I come into my bedroom, it's the end of the day, I'm getting ready for bed, and there's my wet towel from the shower on the day on the floor. And all of a sudden, but it's okay, because after all, you know, I'm not in the basement, and after all, I was busy, and I had a sermon to write, and after all, you know, I was saving children's lives or something important, right? So when I do it, it's not that bad. But when others do it, that's when you really become a hypocrite, right? That's really become a hypocrite. When I saw my towel there and realized what I had done, I became really aware I am capable of hypocrisy. I'm really capable of this. I am capable of getting mad about something you do that I do myself. And it's not just wet towels. I wish it was. You know, gossip about me, and that's bad, but gossiping about you, that's acceptable, right? I mean, we all have these inconsistencies, and this is where we cross lines. So are you capable of saying, you know, I'm capable of this? Are you willing to say, I'm capable of being a hypocrite? So this is the first confession. The second confession is, this is what I confess to you all today. I'm nothing more than a forgiven sinner. That's all I am. That's all I am. I confess that to you. There's no reason for me to ever look down on another human being. There's no reason for me ever, ever, ever to think that I'm better. Like that verse said. To be confident in my own righteousness, I have no confidence in it. To look down on someone else, I don't ever want to do that. Some people really struggle with the word sinner, and the simplest concept of the word sinner is anti-love. Anti-love. Anything that's not loving. God is love. So if you say something unloving, that's sin because it's opposite of what God is. God is love. If you do something unloving, if you have a chance to love someone and you withhold it for selfish reasons, that's all of that. Anti-love. And the reality is when we look at our own lives, my life is filled, absolutely filled with examples of times that I've been unloving towards people. It's filled with it. I have been unloving in my lifetime. So I'm not better than another human being. My goodness is completely meaningless to God when it comes to heaven. I will never stand in front of the pearly gates and God says, why should I let you? And I will never describe to him a list of good things I've done. It's meaningless. It has no bearing on my acceptance into the family of God. Matter of fact, look at how the prophet Isaiah puts this, and isn't this relevant for today? We're all infected. Not just some of the population, all of us. We are all infected and impure with sin. And when we display these righteous deeds that we think we're done that are going to make us okay with God, they're nothing to him but filthy rags. They have no bearing. So the most important spiritual truth, matter of fact, one of the most important spiritual truths you can ever learn in life is this. Good people don't go to heaven. Did you know that? Good people don't go to heaven. Never will. Never can. Never will. Forgiven people go to heaven. Good people don't go to heaven. Every religion in the world has a list of what you have to do in order to earn your way to the next level, whatever they define the next level. Many forms of Christianity have this too. Many forms of Christianity talk about a whole list of good deeds and bad deeds, and you do the good and don't do the bad and you'll be okay. And they're all wrong. They are all opposite of what Jesus taught. Jesus was very clear about this. Jesus said, you want to be with my Father in heaven, you have to be perfect. He didn't lower the bar. He didn't say good. Good people never go to heaven. I will not go to heaven because I'm good. Period. Forgiven people go to heaven. And that's it. That's the only group. If you see anything good in me, my future isn't assured because of anything I've ever done. My future is assured because Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago gave his life for me on a cross to pay for all that I've done that's wrong, so that I could be forgiven. I have absolutely nothing. I'm going to stand in front of him and say, here, take this. This is my ticket in. Nothing. So why in the world, if I am in the same boat as every other human being, would I ever look down on another human being? I'm nothing but a forgiven sinner. That's all I am. I'm not better than any other human being on earth. I have no reason to look down on anyone. Does this make sense? When you get this internalized, you have no reason for hypocrisy to be judgmental or proud or arrogant. Because you got nothing you're offering him. And I admit this. This is all I am. Not only that, I also admit this truth in my life. I have junk in my life, things in my life that are not pleasing to God. I admit this fully. They are not pleasing to God right now. And I don't know if you can admit this, but I hope you can. There was an atheist who posted it on his blog. He said, I never expect Christians to be infallible people or perfect people, but is genuineness too much to ask? No, that's not too much to ask. We can be genuine. We can be honest about the fact that we are still flawed human beings. As a matter of fact, This verse only makes sense, I'm going to show you, only makes sense in the understanding and acknowledgement of that truth right there, that I stuff in my life that's not right with God. The Bible says now, once you acknowledge it, now here's how we're supposed to function as a group. We're supposed to be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. And you know why why we're supposed to do that? It's because you all have faults. And I have faults. And you have gaps between how you live and how God wants you to live. And so do I. And we're not acceptable to God because we do good things. We're acceptable because of his son Jesus and what he's done for us. And all of us have gaps in our life between where we live and where God wants us to live. You do. I do too. I have a list of things that are gaps in my life that I would love to. I don't listen all that well all the time. Sometimes I'm way too opinionated. I admit that. I have gaps between where I want to be and where I am. But between where Jesus wants me to be and where I am. I can at times be dismissive of other people's opinions. I have, on many occasions, exaggerated to make myself look better. I admit that to you. I hate that part of me. And I could go on and on. I have an accountability partner that I talk to regularly who knows my biggest struggles. Because there's gaps between who I am and who Jesus wants me to be, and I could admit that to you. So again, why would I ever look down on anyone? Because they have a different gap? When I lose sight of where I'm really at spiritually, that's when I really become a hypocrite. And we can't lose sight of this. This is true. Can you say this? Can you comfortably say this? There's stuff in my life where I'm not pleasing God like I really want to. And then the fifth thing is I will spend the rest of my life being made holy. You will never see a perfect man here, ever. Not while I'm here on earth. Ever. I will never be perfect. The rest of my life, God will be working on me to make me holy. One of my favorite verses in the Bible, I've quoted this before, I love it, from Hebrews chapter 10. Look at this verse. There's so much great spiritual truth here. Because by one sacrifice, which is the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, he has made perfect forever. Some of my favorite words in the Bible. Those who are being made holy. In that sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, what happened is, when you put your faith in Jesus, all that was wrong, all the unloving words and thoughts and deeds you've ever done were paid for in full, and he says your soul was made perfect forever. Love that promise. But the rest of your life, he will work inside of your thoughts and words and actions to make you holy, because you're still not where he wants you to be. He can forgive you, cleanse your soul, and you still can make a choice tomorrow to act in a loving way, right? Or to say something unloving. So the rest of my life, I will never be perfect. You'll never see perfection here. So here's how I want you to think about the church and what the church should be thought of. So that we just kind of lower the expectations to a realistic level of what we should be. Do you ever known anyone who went to Alcoholics Anonymous? You ever known anyone in your life who did that? I have friends who've been there. I have friends who still go there. Do you hate them for going? Do you look down on them for going? I really respect them for going. Number one, it takes tremendous courage to walk into a group and stand up and say that, right? The moment you walk into that group, everybody knows why you're there. You go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, anyone sees you walking into a meeting where it says AA meeting tonight, we all know. We know why you're there. You're not there for the cookies and the treats. You're there because you got an issue. And you're willing to deal with it, and you're willing to be honest. And doesn't it all begin with that honesty? I really respect people who go to AA programs or NA or any of these other recovery programs. The church is just a big AA program. That's all we are. And it begins with honesty. Our healing really begins with honesty. When we walk in here and say, I got nothing. Nothing no good I'm offering to God. I'm not going to be a perfect person, never will be a perfect person. I walk in here because I need God desperately in my life. And when we lay that kind of honesty out there, then the church can become the place where it's supposed to be. A place where we're not pretending, we put down our masks, and we really start to deal with the stuff in our life that's not like Jesus wants it to be. So are those confessions something that you can comfortably say? Hypocrisy, that mask starts to fall away when we get honest. But that's not where we stop. The second thing is now we have to start obsessing over personal purity. We have to really obsess about personal purity. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I am never more of a hypocrite than when I make your flaws my focus. Never. I become a tremendous hypocrite when all I can think about and focus on is where you're blowing it, where you're not like Jesus, where you're screwing up. I become a huge hypocrite when I do that. And I have so many examples. There's an interesting thing. In my life in Christianity and my personal life and what I've observed in all these years of being a pastor is I see people kind of go through this phase where it really becomes about rules. And usually it's driven by love for God. I want to be a good follower of Jesus, and all of a sudden it becomes rules, 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 and we make all these lists of rules. When I was a young Christian in high school, I became a Christian in high school, I was given a book somehow by this guy who wrote a book about how rock and roll is all evil. And I read the book, and I'm like, oh my goodness, rock and roll is evil. I got to stop listening to rock and roll. The problem was my sister, who was a Christian, older than me, she still listened to rock and roll. So I remember one time being in the car with her, and she turned on the radio to a rock station. And she was listening and singing along. I got so mad, I snapped it off, and I scolded her for her sinful ways, and I rebuked her for her sinfulness. I was like, oh boy. So that was happening. At the same time, I was a wrestler, and I was heavy into weightlifting. What music do you think I listened to when I lifted weights? You think I listened to hymns? Nope. Same time I was condemning her, I'd go home and she'd hear in my bedroom, because I had my whole weight set there, Def Leppard. Not a Christian group, just in case you were wondering. Pour Some Sugar on Me is not about baking. So just so you know, in case you're wondering, that's not what it's about. And that's what I would listen to. As I condemned her in the car, I am never more of a hypocrite than when I make your flaws and your struggles my focus. Do you get that? You see how ridiculous that is? Jesus is so clear about this. When he was talking to those hypocrites, he's like, you people, you're making me so mad. Look what he said. He would say this to the church in America. First, take the plank out of your eye. Then you'll see clearly, remove the speck from your brother's eye. You can spend the rest of your life doing that first thing, right? Do you think you'll ever run out of areas in your life where Jesus might want to work on refining something inside of you? I never will. Never even close. Never even close. So he says the first thing, first, is me, not you. And this is what screws people up and hurts them so bad as they come to the church. And we give them the impression that you're flawed and you're broken and this is wrong with you and this is wrong with you and this is wrong with you and this is wrong with you. Rather than it's like, yeah, hey, I'm really, welcome to my AA meeting. Welcome to my recovery meeting. This is the church. I'm flawed. I've got all these things. You're flawed. Welcome. Hey, you're just like me. You're a flawed human being. Welcome. And now I can do what that verse said earlier. I can show patience with you in the middle of your faults because I'm going to need that too. And I'm doing it because I love you and I need that same love back from you. Even in those times, boy, the Bible's so clear about this. Even those times where there are people who are really struggling in the church and we're supposed to step in and help them, look at what he says. He says, dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should, look at what he says, gently and humbly help that person back on the path. You know why humbly? Because you're not better than them. You're not better than them. Okay, so they've fallen into this thing that's really trapped them. I mean, all of you have seen people fall into alcoholism, or fall into a gambling addiction, or fall into some other addiction that's really life-controlling. You're not better than them. You just sin differently than them. So he says, with humility and gentleness, we help them back on the right path. And then he goes on to say, and be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself. Share each other's burdens. Wouldn't that be great if that's what the church was known for? Like in an AA meeting, they give you a sponsor and they have someone that's going to hold you accountable and check on you. And when you start to struggle, they're on the phone with you or they're at your house taking the bottle out of your hands because they just want to share the struggle with you. They want you to recover. Wouldn't the church be an amazing place if we were like that? It's like, oh yeah, I'm flawed too. And I'm not looking down on you. I'm not looking down on you at all because I'm flawed and I need God so much in my life. And you can struggle here with us and we'll just be here and love you and help you through this, and not with arrogance, not with cruelty. So again, the question for you is, are you more bothered by the sins of your spouse than your own? Or the flaws of your kids than your own? Or the flaws of your coworkers than your own? I'm never more of a hypocrite than when I'm making other people my focus over myself. One last thing. What Jesus said finally to the hypocrites is, we need to get our priorities straight again. And this is just so fun to talk about, this piece of it. We need to get our priorities back. And part of why I'm speaking about this is because the mess that our world is in right now is an opportunity for the church, and I feel like we're blowing it. I feel like we're really blowing it, if I can be honest with you. And I'm going to give an example of a Christian out there blowing it. I'm not limiting it to him blowing it, okay? I don't feel like this is our finest moment as Christianity. So there was a pastor, and read about this week, and again, I found it on an atheist website. I was doing research for this message, and he was talking about hypocrisy, and he had posted this video of this pastor down in Tennessee. And this pastor loves Dunkin' Donut coffee. Dunkin' Donut. He gets Dunkin' Donuts coffee, 2 medium coffees every morning and every evening, 7 creams and 5 sugars in each one. I'm not kidding. It's like, wow. And he said, yep, I know I got to shoot. I watched his video rant, so I'm not taking it from anyone else. I watched what he said. So he'd just gotten out of Dunkin' Donuts. He was so mad. He was so mad because they had a sign up, and it said, no entrance without a mask. Well, he wasn't wearing a mask. He was going to go in there, he was going to get his coffee without a mask. And so he went in there without his mask, and the manager pulled him aside and said, please don't come in again. And he said, I was embarrassed by that. And so he said, you know, you push my buttons, you're going to get the worst in me. And so he started getting really angry. And on the way out, he claims he just pushed the door open with his foot, and the store manager and the employees claimed that he kicked it. And he had work boots on. And so the manager said, please don't kick the door. And so he really got mad now. And he admits this on the video. Like I said, I watched it. So he came back in and accused the manager of lying about him kicking the door, and it escalated to the point where he said, the pastor said, if you call me a liar one more time, I'm going to take these work boots and I'm going to kick your teeth down your throat. And in the video it said, yes, I said it, and in the moment I meant it. And it had, I don't know how many millions of views. It's like, okay, anyone else have a problem with this? Now let's hold up a sign. John 3:16, right? God is love. Now, remember what I said earlier about looking down on people? How easy is it to look down on people? How easy is it for you to sit here and think, that guy is wrong, that guy is bad, and here's my question for you. You ever lost your temper? Ever said something to someone you love that you really regretted later? See how easy it is to slip into hypocrisy? It's like, boy, his sin, that's bad. But mine, you know, I was justified. My son made me do it. You know, the worst temper explosion I ever had was in a church service in the Twin Cities. We were on vacation with my family, and my son Nathaniel was in high school and in the middle of his dark years, and he was just being a total S. I can't even say. I was so mad at him. In the church service we were visiting, he was making fun of this. They had all these flags hanging up from all of these countries around. He was making fun of it, and he wasn't being quiet. And there were people looking, and they were turning around looking, and I kept whispering him to be quiet, and he wouldn't. He just kept making fun of it. And finally I leaned over and I said, if you don't shut the F up, I'm not kidding, I'm just being honest. I whispered it to him, if you don't shut the F up, I'm going to knock your block off. I said that to my son in a church service. Okay? Right? So I should really come down hard on this guy, right? Do you hear how easy it is, though, to do that? I mean, it's so subtle. Hypocrisy is so subtle. All of a sudden, his sin, boy, that's an awful thing. And I'm not downplaying. He should never have said that to the manager, right? Never. He should have just put a mask on and take the coffee. He wasn't saying you can't worship Jesus anymore. He's just saying this is our rule, and it's a state rule now. We just have to do it. So just do it. And if you don't do it, then that's okay. But look at what Jesus said, because this is what people were doing in his day too. These religious leaders, they were like, boy, you guys are all really screwed up. Wish you could be like me. And Jesus finally confronted them, and he said this, what sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are careful, you keep your lists. That's what he was saying. You tithe even the tiniest income of your herb gardens. So the tithing is the first tenth of what you earn. You give back to God at the place you work. He was saying, you guys have your own list. It's like, good followers of God do all of these things. And they had this on their list was tithing, even down to the smallest percentage of what your garden produced. I'm going to give 1/10 of this. And so what you're doing is you make your list, and then you're like, yep, checked off all these things. Look at me. I'm amazing. And Jesus said, let's have some reality here, because look at what you really are. You ignore the more important aspects of the law. These things aren't on your list. Getting justice for others, showing mercy to others, helping faith. You should tithe, but don't neglect the more important things. And that's what's happening, I think, in American Christianity today, is the most important thing is being set aside so that we can have our own freedoms and our own rules and our own list of rules. Does anyone seriously doubt what the number one thing is according to Jesus? Does anyone not know that the number one thing according to Jesus is love? It's not even close. There's nothing else more important to it. That's why the pastor's behavior was wrong. It violated the law, which is what it says in the New Testament. Jesus says, it's my law. It violates the law of love. It's not loving to threaten to kick somebody's teeth down their throat. That's unloving. But I violated it too the day I threatened to knock my son's block off in a church. So I'm not any better. I'm no different. I need your patience. I have flaws. But still, it was wrong, and we can stand here and say it was wrong because it violated the law of love. Look at what Jesus said. Jesus said, love God. You've got to love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Couldn't we spend the rest of our life just focused on that verse right there? Any of you want to claim that you love him with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, all your strength? Of course not. This is what it's about. And then he doesn't even pause. He goes right into the next verse and says, oh, by the way, love people. A second is equally important. So he puts them on the same level. Love God, love people. And then he says, love your neighbors as yourself. And then he tells a story that says, every human being is your neighbor. That manager in the coffee store is his neighbor. That's why it was wrong. It's like you violated the law of love. My son sitting next to me in the church service was my neighbor. It was wrong. I violated the law of love. I don't know what I should have done, but not that. Not that. I violated the law of love. It is the law of God. It's the law of Christianity. So my mind goes to two different places because I completely agree with this author said the Christian faith should be created upon love, defined by love. So here's where my mind goes. First for us as a group, as a church, we need to be defined by love, right? If love is the preeminent principle according to Jesus, then the very first thing they should say about Penuel is, man, they sure are a loving group of people, right? Because that's what they should say. Because we claim to follow Jesus. So if people come and encounter us here and they don't feel loved, we've blown it, right? If our community doesn't feel loved, we've blown it. So this is more challenging, and I'm putting this out there because I don't know the answer to it, but the reality is, it's been bothering me for a while. Before COVID hit, we had a church member and I had sat down and we'd gotten this whole list of things that we were going to do every month. We have different serving focus, how we were going to show love in some really fun, creative ways to our community and to big international needs. I was so excited to implement this. We got one done and COVID hit, and our calendar no longer made sense. And since then, we've been starting to do services again, but we haven't figured this out. That's why I was so happy a few weeks ago when somebody told us about this opportunity in Dodgeville for this recovery house where they're helping women get off of drugs and they didn't have a TV. And we just put that out, one announcement on a Sunday morning, and we got enough money to buy them a 50-inch TV. And I love that because that's who we are. That's who we are as followers of Jesus. We love people. You have a need, we're here to help. Right? That's who we are. So I want to figure out how do we show love in the middle of COVID. You know what my snarky little personality kind of thinks when I think about this? It's like, for those of us who really struggle with the masks, what we should be doing is we should be a mask-making organization where we're giving them away for free, and our masks should have messages of hope on them, or messages of humor to make other people laugh when they look at our mask. So that at least we bring a little brightness into this world. Wouldn't that be good? Don't you think that would fit more? To me, that just feels like it fits more. So even with people that struggle with this, and I am not downplaying the struggles. I've heard the scientific arguments on both sides. I get how confused people are today. I am not in any way disrespecting anyone who holds either view, or any view in the middle, because there's just 1,000 views. I'm not in any way, but don't you think that we should be trying to think, how in the middle of this crisis can we show more love? But then, personally, here's the real challenge. It's one thing for us to think about this corporately, it's another thing for you to think about it individually, and that's what I want you to think about. Would the people in your life who are closest to you say that you are defined by love? When was the last time your spouse felt deeply loved by you? When's the last time your kids or your mom or dad saw you demonstrate your love to them? And do you love all the people you work with? Hard to say that with a straight face, isn't it? Do you love all the people you work with? The reality is, you know that Jesus spoke to that. He said, if you love the easy ones, who cares about that? Everybody does that. If you're my follower, love the hard ones like he does. All of us can love the lovable ones. He doesn't leave that open to us. You gotta love the hard ones. You're going to love the ones that nobody else loves. And I'm asking you today, do you? Do you love the ones that nobody else loves? And what does it mean to show love to them? That's what we have to figure out. Because we're not better than them. We sin differently. We're just forgiven sinners, that's all we are. Who have junk in our life, who are attending a recovery program called the church. Because we desperately need God. And we need him in our lives, and we'll never stop needing him. So for those of you who say that you follow Jesus, there's a lot here to think about. I really want you to think about, are those honest statements things that you can authentically say? In point number 1. I want you to think about, are you more obsessed with someone else's flaws today than your own? Have you gotten distracted? Their mistakes are really the focus rather than what's going on inside of you? And are you really loving like God commands us to love? Now, if you're exploring faith with us here or watching online and you're just trying to check out this whole Christianity thing, maybe this series, somebody in the church invited you to watch one of these messages and this is the one you picked. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad. It is imperative that you all understand this spiritual truth. Good people never go to heaven. Never. No good person will be in heaven, which is stunning. Because America is about working and we earn what we get, right? We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and we work really hard, and Jesus came into this world 2,000 years ago and said, if you want to be with my Father in heaven, be perfect. And everyone said that who can get in? Nobody. On our own efforts, none. We have nothing to offer him. That's why he offered us his son. That's what the sign John 3:16 is about. God so loved the world that he gave us something. His only son, who didn't come into the world to condemn the world. He came in the world to save it. He came in the world to save us from all the unloving things we've said and done by dying in our place on that cross. Let me have you bow your heads. Maybe for some of you, it's time to receive this incredible gift. Maybe for the first time, you've understood it's not about your effort to earn it with God. You can never, ever, ever earn it. It's only at the point of surrender that you experience God. Give up thinking you will ever be good enough. You never will be. It's not found that way. Salvation is found through Jesus when you reach that point of surrender and say something like this. And you can say it right now. You can say, Jesus, I'm not perfect, not even close. I won't even pretend that I am. If I were being honest with you today, God, I would say I have blown it countless times in my life, and I know that. I have been unloving, and I've said unloving things. And I confess and admit this to you. But I've heard that you died on the cross for me. So I'm asking you to forgive me. I need you in my life. Please come into my life today. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish up today, I want to ask you all to grab your little card again out of your program and just take a moment to fill this out. Even if you're a regular tender, we ask you to do this each week. Some of you just prayed and asked him to forgive you. Check the box. Let us know what you've done, and we'll send you something nice in the mail. Or you've renewed your commitment, let us know about that. And for those of you watching online, you could just write it, go to the Penuel Church website. There's a Connect With Us tab, and let us know if you've made that decision. We'll send you some follow-up stuff in the mail. We also have free books that are here at the campus today. Again, you're welcome to pick one of those books up on the back table. They're yours. If you want it, or you want to give it away, we will order more. If we run out, we will just keep getting them. We want you to have the resources you need to make sure that you understand your faith. So take them. And again, if you're watching online, you want one of those books, just write us. We'll gladly send you one. So thanks so much for coming, and hope to see you again next week.